The jungle moon of Varith 7 had seen many terrible things in its long history, but it had never seen anything quite like what was about to happen on this particular day. The Kethari hunting vessel descended through the thick green clouds, like a blade cutting through flesh, its dark hull gleaming with the kind of menace that only true predators could appreciate inside the ship. Haifang Kesrith stood at the viewing port and watched the jungle canopy grow closer with each passing moment. He was magnificent by any standard of his species, standing nearly 3 meters tall with 8 powerful limbs covered in black chitin armor that had been grown. Not made his venom glands pulsed with enough toxin to kill 100 lesser creatures, and his compound eyes could track movement faster than most beings could. Thinkesrath had earned his title through blood and conquest across 40 different worlds. He had killed creatures that would make most species soil themselves in terror. He feared nothing in the known galaxy. Or so he believed. On this morning, the ship touched down on a clearing that had been burned into the jungle, specifically for this gathering already. Other vessels surrounded the landing zone, each one belonging to a different predator species. The Varax had arrived first. As they always did, their pack ships were sleek and fast, designed for the chase that their species lived for. Varax themselves were terrifying hunters who communicated through sounds so low that most species could not even hear them. They moved as one unit, 12 individuals acting with a single mind, and they had never failed to bring down their prey in all of recorded history. The Skulls had come as well, their ships nearly invisible against the dark sky. They were ambush predators, patient and silent, who could wait for days without moving before striking with deadly precision. Their eyes saw only heat, painting the world in shades of warmth and cold. And they used this gift to find prey that thought itself hidden. A young Skull warrior named Veth stood near his elders, his hunting record already impressive, at 17 confirmed kills of sentient beings. There were others too, species from across the galaxy who had earned their place at this gathering through countless generations of predatory excellence. The Nefkai were small but vicious, their society built entirely around the hunt. The Gorath were massive beasts who crushed their prey with raw strength. The Desik were poisoners who could kill with a single touch. All of them had come to Varith 7 for the Apex Communion, an ancient tradition that stretched back 12,000 years here. The predator species would establish their dominance hierarchies, settle territorial disputes, and negotiate hunting rights across the contested systems of the galaxy. It was a gathering of killers, each one more dangerous than the last, each one certain of their place near the top of the universal food chain. Haifang Kesrith stepped off his ship and breathed in the humid jungle air. The smell of green growth and distant decay filled his senses, and he felt the familiar excitement of being in a hunting ground around him. The other predator delegations were taking their positions, sizing each other up with the casual arrogance of apex species. Then everything changed. A new sound cut through the jungle noise, a high whine of engines that did not match any of the vessels already present. Every predator head turned toward the sky as a small shuttle broke through the cloud cover. It was tiny compared to the hunting ships, barely large enough to carry a handful of passengers, and its design was simple and utilitarian. There were no weapons visible on its hull, no armor plating, no signs of threat. The shuttle landed at the edge of the clearing, and for a long moment, nothing happened. Ekisrath felt his venom glands twitch in a way they had not twitched in decades. Something was wrong. Though he could not identify what, the Varax pack shifted uneasily, their formation loosening in a way that should have been impossible for such disciplined hunters. The Skulth thermal readers reported that the temperature inside the shuttle was comfortable for most carbon-based life forms. Nothing special. Then the shuttle door opened, and a single figure stepped out. She was human, a species that Kesrith knew only from reports and distant encounters. Her name was Dr. Elena Vasquez. Though he would not learn this until later, she appeared to be in the middle years of human life. Her dark hair streaked with gray and pulled back from her face. She wore soft fabric clothing that offered no protection whatsoever. Simple field clothes designed for comfort. Rather than combat, she carried no weapons that anyone could see. Only a worn satchel that hung at her side. She had no armor. No claws, no fangs, no venom, no spines, no chitin. No scales by every measure that mattered to the assembled predators. She was soft and weak and utterly defenseless, and yet Khosrow felt his venom glands seal themselves shut. This was an involuntary response. Something his body did without his permission. And it had not happened since he was a juvenile facing his first true predator around him. He heard the subtle sounds of other species reacting in their own ways. The Varax pack broke formation entirely. Individuals stepping away from each other as if they had forgotten how to hunt together. A Skulf warrior, the young one called Veth, who had killed 17 sentient beings, took 3 steps backward before he caught himself and stopped the Goroth. Those massive crushers of bone and flesh lowered their heads in a gesture that looked almost submissive. None of them understood why they were reacting this way. The human woman was small and fragile, and alone she should have been prey. Easy prey. The kind of target that any of them could have killed without effort. Instead, every predator on that landing field felt something ancient and terrible, stirring in the depths of their instincts. Something that told them to leave, something that told them to run. Dr. Elena Vasquez walked across the landing field with the unhurried pace of someone taking a morning stroll through a garden. She did not look around nervously, or hunch her shoulders, or make herself small. She did not bare her teeth, or puff up her body, or make any threat display. She simply walked, calm and patient and completely unafraid, toward the gathering of the most dangerous creatures in the known galaxy, and every single one of them watched her come with something that felt terribly, impossibly like fear. Khosrow found that he could not look away from her. Her eyes were small by his standards, forward-facing like all pursuit predators, but there was something in them that made his chitin feel thin and brittle. She was not afraid of them. She was not afraid of any of them, and somehow, impossibly, that was the most terrifying thing he had ever encountered in his long and bloody life. The first night of the Apex Communion was traditionally a time for the predator species to establish their positions through subtle displays of dominance. Hunting trophies were shown, old kills were discussed, and the hierarchy began to take shape through posturing and intimidation. But this night was different. High Fang Khosrow stood in the great hall that had been constructed for the gathering, surrounded by the deadliest beings in the galaxy, and found that no one was talking about hunting trophies. Everyone was talking about the human. She should not be here, growled Vorth, the alpha of the Varax pack, his massive jaw working with agitation. The Galactic Compact permits one observer from any member species, Khosrow replied, though he shared the alpha's unease. Humanity has been part of the Compact for 30 of their years now, and they have the right to send a representative. Then let them send someone else, Vorth said. Let them send one of their warriors, one of their hunters, someone we can understand. What is there to understand about her? Asked Desik Prime, the leader of the poison-touched ones. She is small and soft and alone, and she carries no weapons, and she has no natural defenses of any kind. And yet, Khosrow said quietly, your venom sacs have been sealed since she arrived, have they not? The Desik Prime did not answer, which was answer enough. Srath had spent the hours since the human's arrival trying to understand his own reaction to her presence. He was not young, and he was not foolish, and he had faced death many times without flinching. But when Dr. Elena Vasquez had walked across that landing field, something deep inside him had recognized a threat that his conscious mind could not identify. He needed to understand what that threat was. I have been watching her, said a voice from the shadows, and everyone turned to see Veth, the young Skulth warrior. Stepping into the light, you were assigned to observe the human. Kasrath acknowledged. Report what you have learned. Veth's thermal sensing eyes flickered with colors that indicated deep confusion. She does not startle, he said. I tested this myself, creating sudden sounds and movements at the edge of her vision. And her body showed no reaction. Perhaps her senses are too dull to detect threats, suggested one of the Garth representatives. No, Veth said. She detected every test I performed. And she turned to look at me each time, but her heart rate never increased. And her body temperature remained perfectly stable. She knew she was being tested, Voreth said with a low rumble. Possibly, Veth agreed. But there is more. And this is the part I do not understand. He paused. And even the veteran killers in the room leaned forward slightly. She sleeps deeply, Veth continued. Tonight, I entered her quarters while she was in what humans call REM sleep, the deepest level of their rest cycle, and she was completely vulnerable, completely defenseless, completely unaware of my presence. And you did not kill her, Kasrath said. It was not a question, Veth's. Thermal patterns shifted to colors of shame and confusion. I could not cross the threshold of her room, he admitted. I stood in the doorway for nearly an hour, and every time I tried to move forward, something stopped me. Something inside my own body refused to obey my commands. The room fell silent. Was she somehow aware of you? Thesek Prime asked, was she faking her sleep to ward you off? No, Veth said with certainty. Her breathing was slow and regular. Her body temperature had dropped to sleeping levels, and her eyes were moving beneath her lids in the pattern of true deep sleep, and she was completely helpless. And I still could not bring myself to touch her. That is impossible, Voreth said. But his voice lacked conviction. There was something else, Veth added. Something about the way she smells. Every predator in the room perked up at this scent was crucial to hunting. A language older than words, a truth that could not be hidden. She does not smell like prey, Veth said slowly, as if working through his own confusion. But she does not smell like a predator either, not like any of us. And I cannot explain what she does smell like, except to say that she smells like something that has never needed to be either. That makes no sense, one of the Nethkai representatives said. A creature is either predator or prey, hunter or hunted. There is no third option. And yet, Veth said, when I stood in her doorway and breathed in her scent, I felt something I have never felt before in my 17 kills. What did you feel? Kasrath asked. The young Skulth warrior looked at the High Fang with eyes that held no deception. I felt like I was being evaluated, he said, like she was deciding, even in her sleep, what I was to her, and I did not want to be there when she finished deciding. The silence that followed was deeper than any silence Kasrath had ever experienced. Every predator in that room had spent their lives being the ones who decided, who evaluated, who chose whether something lived or died. The idea that something could look at them and make that same choice was fundamentally wrong. I want her watched constantly, Kasrath said at last. Every species will assign observers, and we will share what we learn. And we will understand what this human is before this communion ends. The other leaders nodded their agreement over the next 2 days. The predator species performed their traditional rituals and negotiations, but always with one eye on the human observer. Dr. Elena Vasquez attended every session, sitting quietly in the back of the room and taking notes in a small device. She asked occasional questions, always polite and academic in nature, and she accepted the suspicious stares of the assembled killers with the same calm patience she had shown since her arrival. She ate her meals alone but did not seem bothered by the isolation. She walked the jungle paths around the compound without guards or weapons. She smiled at predators who growled, and Huron nodded respectfully to those who turned away, and slowly, impossibly, the fear that every species felt in their presence began to grow rather than fade, because the longer they watched her, the more they realized that she was watching them back, not with the frantic vigilance of prey trying to survive, not with the calculating hunger of a predator seeking weakness. She watched them the way a scientist watches specimens in a laboratory, patient and curious, and utterly without fear, as if she already knew exactly what they were capable of and had already decided that it did not matter. The dispute between the Cathari and the Nethkai had been building for generations. Both species claimed hunting rights to a cluster of 17 worlds in the outer systems, and neither was willing to yield their claim to the other by the ancient laws of the Apex Communion. Such disputes could only be settled in one way: a hunt. The terms are simple. Haifang Kesrith announced to the assembled predators, each side will choose a champion, and those champions will enter the hunting ground at opposite ends, and the hunt will continue until dawn. And the survivor will claim the contested territories for their species. The Nethkai delegation shifted uneasily. They were small predators, quick and clever and vicious, but they were badly outmatched against the Cathari in direct competition. Their champion would almost certainly die, and their claim would die with them. "We accept the terms," said the Nethkai elder, a voice heavy with resignation. "We will choose our champion from among our warriors and face whatever fate awaits us." "There is no need for that," said a calm voice from the back of the room. Every head turned to see Dr. Elena Vasquez rising from her seat. "I will stand as champion for the Nethkai," she said. The room erupted in sounds of confusion and disbelief. Srath felt his venom glands pulse with something that might have been anticipation or might have been dread. "You cannot be serious," he said. "The Nethkai must choose a champion from their own species, and you are human. The ancient laws state that any species present at the communion may offer a champion on behalf of another species." Dar Vasquez replied calmly, "I have read your traditions quite thoroughly." She was correct. Kesrith realized with growing unease. The law had been written thousands of years ago to allow allied species to support each other, and it had never been invoked because no species had ever been foolish enough to fight another's battles. "You will die," he said bluntly. "The Cathari champion will be Sorth, our finest hunter, and he has never lost prey in his entire life. Then this will be an educational experience for everyone." Dr. Vasquez said with a slight smile. The hunting ground was a section of jungle 3 kilometers square, surrounded by sensors that would track both champions throughout the night. The rules were simple. Survive until dawn. Killing was permitted but not required. The champion who remained standing when the sun rose would win. Sorth entered the jungle from the eastern edge as the last light faded. From the sky he was confident, almost eager, his 8 limbs carrying him silently through the undergrowth while his compound eyes adjusted to the darkness. The human had no natural weapons, no armor, no venom, no speed. She would be easy prey. He found her trail within minutes. Humans were not subtle creatures, and she had left clear signs of her passage through the vegetation: broken branches, disturbed soil, the faint heat signature of her footprints still visible in the cooling earth. Sorth followed the trail with the patience of a born hunter, moving carefully but confidently through the darkness. The trail led in a wide circle through the jungle, and Sorth noted this with mild interest. Perhaps the human was lost. Confused by the unfamiliar terrain, he continued following, his venom glands beginning to swell in anticipation of the kill. The trail led in another circle, smaller than the first, then another, smaller still, and then Sorth stopped moving as a terrible realization crept into his mind. The circles were not random, they were tightening. He was not hunting her, she was hurting him. Sorth spun around, all 8 eyes scanning the darkness, and saw her standing at the edge of his vision, just standing there, perhaps 50 meters away. Her soft human body outlined against the slightly lighter sky. She was not hiding, not running, not preparing to fight. She was simply watching him. Soreth charged. His 8 limbs propelled him through the undergrowth with devastating speed, his venom spines extending for the killing strike. In seconds he would be upon her, and this strange hunt would be over. But when he reached the spot where she had been standing, she was gone. He heard movement to his left and spun to face it. But there was nothing there. Movement to his right, and again nothing. She was everywhere and nowhere, a ghost in the darkness that he could not pin down for the first hour. Soreth hunted with all the skill and ferocity that had made him legendary. He used every technique he knew, every trick he had learned in decades of killing. He was faster than her, stronger than her, better equipped than her in every measurable way, and yet she was always just out of reach by the second hour. Soreth began to notice something troubling. He was tired, not exhausted, not yet, but definitely tired in a way that should not have been possible so early in the hunt. He had been moving constantly, charging and searching and charging again, while the human simply walked. She walked and walked and walked, never running, never hurrying, just maintaining that same steady, unhurried pace she had shown since the moment she arrived on this moon. By the third hour, Soreth's legs were beginning to tremble. He had covered perhaps 20 kilometers in his frantic hunting, while the human had probably covered less than 5, but she had never stopped moving, and she had never wasted energy. And now she was still fresh while he was beginning to flag. By the 4th hour, Soreth understood what was happening, and the understanding filled him with a horror deeper than anything he had ever experienced. The human was not trying to escape him. She was not trying to hide from him. She was not even trying to fight him. She was simply waiting for him to tire himself out, and it was working. He saw her again, standing in a small clearing, perhaps 30 meters away. She looked exactly as she had looked at the start of the hunt, calm and patient and completely unafraid. Sarge tried to charge, but his legs would not obey him properly. Managed a stumbling run that covered perhaps half the distance before he had to stop and catch his breath. When he looked up, she had not moved. She was still standing there, watching him with those small forward-facing eyes, and for the first time in his life, Soreth understood what it felt like to be prey. The rest of the night was agony. Soreth could not catch her, but she would not let him rest. Every time he stopped moving, she appeared somewhere nearby, watching, waiting, forcing him to move again. She never attacked him, never even threatened him, but her presence was relentless. She was always there, always walking, always patient. As the first light of dawn began to color the eastern sky, Soreth collapsed. His legs simply gave out beneath him, all 8 of them failing at once, and he fell to the jungle floor in a heap of exhausted chitin. He could not move. He could barely breathe. He lay there waiting for the killing strike that would end his shame. Instead, he heard footsteps approaching, soft human footsteps that stopped beside him. He looked up to see Dr. Elena Vasquez sitting down on a fallen log nearby. She reached into her satchel and pulled out a small wrapped package, which she opened to reveal some kind of food bar. She broke it in half and held one piece out to him. "You did well," she said quietly. Most prey would have given up hours ago. Soreth stared at the offered food, unable to process what was happening. "I am not prey," he managed to say, though his voice was weak and broken. "No," Dr. Vasquez agreed. "You are a predator, one of the finest I have ever observed. But you made a mistake that all predators make when they face humans for the first time." "What mistake?" Soreth asked. The human took a bite of her food bar and chewed thoughtfully before answering. "You thought speed and strength and venom would decide this hunt," she said. "You thought it would be over quickly, one way or another, because that is how hunts work for your species." She looked at him with something that might have been sympathy. "Humans do not hunt that way," she said. We do not need to be faster than our prey, or stronger than our prey, or more dangerous than our prey. And how do you hunt? Sorath asked. Arelena Vasquez smiled, and in that smile, Sorath saw something ancient and terrible and patient beyond measure. We simply do not stop, she said. We walk. And we walk. And we walk. And eventually, everything else falls down. The Great Hall was packed with every predator species present at the communion. And for the first time in 12,000 years of gatherings, they were not there to establish dominance or negotiate territory. They were there to listen. High Fang Kesroth had demanded an explanation after the hunt, and Dr. Elena Vasquez had agreed to provide one. She stood at the center of the hall now, surrounded by the deadliest creatures in the known galaxy. And she looked as calm as she had looked from the very first moment of her arrival. You want to know what humans are, she said, her voice carrying easily through the silent room. You want to understand why your instincts warned you about me from the moment I stepped off my shuttle. She paused and looked around at the assembled predators. I'm a xenobiologist, she continued. I have spent my career studying the evolutionary paths that different species have taken across the galaxy. And I have come to understand something that most species never realize about themselves. She touched a device on her wrist, and a holographic display appeared in the air above her head. It showed the image of an ancient Earth, a blue and green world covered in vast grasslands. Humans evolved on a planet called Earth, she said. Like all of you, we are predators, but we did not evolve in jungles or swamps or caves. And we did not develop armor or venom or claws. The image shifted to show a group of early humans, small and fragile looking compared to the animals around them. We evolved on open grasslands, where there was nowhere to hide and nowhere to ambush from. And we were slower than almost everything around us, and weaker than almost everything around us. Then how did you survive? Asked Vorath. The Varax Alpha, by becoming something that had never existed before in the galaxy. Dr. Vasquez replied. We became persistence predators. The image changed again, showing a group of humans following a large antelope-like creature across the savannah. When we hunted, she explained, we did not chase our prey, and we did not ambush it. And we did not try to overpower it, because we could not do any of those things successfully. Instead, we followed it. We walked after it, hour after hour, never getting close enough to catch it, but never falling far enough behind to lose it. And every time it ran from us, it had to expend enormous amounts of energy. While we just kept walking, the holographic prey animal was shown running, then stopping to rest, then running again as the humans caught up. Eventually, Dr. Vasquez said, our prey would collapse from exhaustion, and we would walk up to it. And we would kill it without any fight at all. The room was utterly silent. Your species, she continued, looking at each predator in turn, evolved to hunt in quick bursts, to chase and catch and kill in minutes or hours, because that is what worked in your environments. But humans evolved to hunt over days. Days, repeated Kesroth, his voice strange. Days. Dr. Vasquez confirmed. Human hunters have been documented following wounded prey for 3, 4, 5 days without stopping, sleeping in short shifts, trading off tracking duties, never giving up, never losing the trail. She let that sink in before continuing. But persistence hunting is only part of what makes humans dangerous. The holographic display changed to show a map of Earth, with human populations spreading across every continent. We are also the most adaptable species ever discovered, she said. We have no natural habitat because every habitat is our natural habitat. And we have colonized deserts where the temperature reaches 60 degrees, and tundras where it drops to -50, and jungles and mountains and islands and underwater stations. We eat almost anything, plant or animal or synthetic, and we can survive on minimal water and minimal food for extended periods. And we heal from injuries that would kill most species. This is impossible, said Desic Prime. No single species can be adapted to all environments. You are correct, Dr. Vasquez said. We are not adapted to any of them. But we do not need to be adapted, because we have something better. She held up her hands. Those soft pink appendages with their 5 flexible fingers. We have these, she said. We build tools, and we wear clothes, and we construct shelters, and we make our environment adapt to us instead of adapting to our environment. The display showed humans building fires, crafting weapons, constructing houses. Your species developed natural armor, she said. Looking at Kesrath, we developed metal armor and ceramic armor, and energy shields. Your species developed natural venom, she said. Looking at Desic Prime, we developed chemical weapons and biological agents, and nuclear fire. Your species developed pack, hunting through infrasound, she said. Looking at Vorath, we developed language and writing, and electronic communication that spans galaxies. She turned off the holographic display and looked at the assembled predators with those calm, patient eyes. But none of that is what makes us truly dangerous. She paused, and the silence stretched out like a held breath. What makes us truly dangerous is that we are social persistence predators who never forget. Explain, Kesrath demanded. If a predator attacks a human, Dr. Vasquez said, and the human survives, that human will remember, and they will tell other humans. And those humans will tell more humans. And we will write it down and store it in our databases and pass it on to our children. And then, one day, humans will come for that predator. Not in anger, not in revenge, just as a matter of settled policy. Because something was marked long ago as a threat. And humans do not forget threats. She smiled, and it was not a threatening smile. But somehow that made it worse. Your species hunt individuals, she said. Humans hunt species. And we do it across generations, and we do not stop until the hunt is finished. The large predators of Earth, the lions and tigers and bears, they learned to fear us before we even developed writing. And they passed that fear down to their children and their children's children. And now they run from us on instinct, even though no individual tiger alive today has ever been hunted by a human. The assembled predators were very still. That is what your instincts were telling you when I arrived. Dr. Vasquez said softly, somewhere in the deep history of biological evolution, something in the chain that led to each of your species encountered something like a human, or learned from something that did. And that encounter left a mark that says, do not attract the attention of the soft, slow creatures who walk upright. Because if you do, they will follow you, and they will not stop following you. And one day you will fall down, and they will still be there, walking toward you. She looked around the room one final time. You are all apex predators in your own environments, she said. You evolved to be the most dangerous thing in any given moment. And you are very good at it. But humans evolved to be the most dangerous thing over time, and time, my friends, is the one thing that we have in endless supply. Hyphan Kesrath spoke into the silence that followed. And if we chose to hunt you, he asked. If all of us together decided that humanity was a threat to be eliminated, Dr. Elena Vasquez looked at him with those calm, patient eyes, and she smiled again. Then you would become the prey, she said simply, and we would walk after you. Across however many years or decades or centuries it took. And eventually you would fall down, and we would still be there, walking toward you, because that is what humans do. We walk, and we wait, and we never, ever stop. The final day of the Apex Communion arrived with a sunrise that painted the jungle canopy in shades of gold, and Red High Fang Kesrath stood at the edge of the landing, field and watched the light spread across the clearing where so many predator species had gathered in 12,000 years of these gatherings. He had never seen one end quite like this. The traditional purpose of the communion was to establish dominance hierarchies among the predator species. The strongest would claim the highest positions. The weakest would accept their lower status. And the galaxy would have order for another generation, but there would be no hierarchy established this time. Instead, over the past 2 days, something unprecedented had happened. The predator species had begun talking to each other not as rivals, but as equals. The Cathari and the Varax, ancient enemies who had spilled each other's blood across 100 worlds, had been seen sharing meals together. The Skulls and the Vesic, species so different that they could barely comprehend each other's existence, had engaged in long discussions about hunting techniques. Even the proud Gorath had lowered their massive heads to speak with the tiny Nethkai, and all of them, every single species present, had reached the same unspoken agreement: humanity was not to be hunted, not because they were strong in the way that predators understood strength, not because they were fast or armored or venomous, or deadly in any immediate sense. They were not to be hunted because every species present now understood, at a level deeper than thought, what their ancestors' instincts had been trying to tell them. You do not hunt something that hunts back. Forever Dr. Elena Vasquez emerged from her quarters and walked across the compound toward her shuttle. She carried her worn satchel over one shoulder and moved with that same unhurried pace that had become familiar to everyone at the gathering. As she walked, predators stopped what they were doing to watch her pass. Some nodded in acknowledgement, which was remarkable given how rarely these species showed respect to anything. Others simply stepped aside to let her through, creating a clear path without being asked. She accepted all of this with the same calm patience she had shown since her arrival near the shuttle. A delegation was waiting for her. High Fang Kesrath stood at the front, flanked by representatives from each of the other predator species. The Nethkai elder held a small ceremonial object in her clawed hands. Dr. Vasquez, Kesrath said as she approached, "Before you leave, we have matters to discuss." The human stopped and tilted her head slightly in a gesture of polite attention. The Apex Communion has decided to extend a formal invitation to humanity. Kesrath continued. You are invited to attend future gatherings, not as observers, but as full participants, with all the rights and privileges that entails. This has never been offered to a species outside the original founding members, added Vorth. In 12,000 years, no new species has been considered worthy of joining our number. Until now, said Vesic Prime Dr. Vasquez, looked at the assembled predators. And for the first time since her arrival, something like surprise flickered across her features. I am honored, she said. I will convey this invitation to my people, and I expect they will accept with gratitude. The Nethkai elder stepped forward and held out the ceremonial object, which appeared to be a small crystal carved into the shape of a hunting beast. On behalf of my people, the elder said, I present you with the title of Hunt Friend, the highest honor the Nethkai can bestow upon an outsider. But I have also taken the liberty of adding a translation in our formal language. She pressed the crystal into Dr. Vasquez's hands, in the tongue of the Nethkai. Your title is She Who Walks Without Hurry. Dr. Vasquez looked down at the crystal, and her expression softened into something warm and genuine. Thank you, she said. I will treasure this. She tucked the crystal carefully into her satchel and turned toward her shuttle. Then she paused and looked back at the assembled predators one final time. May I offer some advice? She asked. From one apex species to others, Kesrath gestured for her to continue. The galaxy is large, Dr. Vasquez said, and there are many species out there who have not yet learned what you learned this week. And some of them will make the mistake of thinking that humans are easy prey because we are soft and slow and have no natural weapons. She smiled that calm, patient smile. When that happens, and it will happen, I would suggest that you stay out of the way, because the hunt that follows will be long, and it will be thorough, and it will not end until we decide it is over. And anyone standing too close might get caught up in it by accident. She turned and walked up the ramp into her shuttle. The door closed behind her with a soft hiss a few minutes later. The shuttle lifted off from the landing field and rose through the green clouds towards space high. Fang Kesrith watched it go until it was nothing but a speck against the morning sky. "Hi, Fang," said a voice beside him. And Kesrith looked down to see a young HFY warrior, one of the junior members of his delegation, who had observed the events of the past week with wide, confused eyes. "I do not understand," the young one said. "She had no weapons, and she had no armor, and she made no threats, and she never once displayed aggression toward any of us. Why do we fear her?" Kesrith considered the question carefully. It was a good question. The same question that had troubled him since the moment the human first stepped onto this moon. "Because she did not fear us," he said finally. "That is all." The young one asked, "That seems like such a small thing." "It is not small," Kesrith said. "Think about what it means. Truly think about it, and you will understand." He turned away from the sky and began walking back toward the compound. Any creature that looks upon the greatest predators in the galaxy without a flicker of fear already knows something that we do not. "What does she know?" the young one asked. Hurrying to keep up, Kesrith stopped and looked down at his junior with eyes that held ancient wisdom and fresh understanding. "She knows how the hunt ends," he said. "She knows with absolute certainty that if we ever tried to hunt her or her species, we would lose. Not today, not tomorrow, perhaps not for many years, but eventually, inevitably, we would lose. She knows this the way you know that fire burns and water flows downward. She knows this in her bones, in her blood, in every fiber of her soft pink body. And when a creature knows that deeply, that completely, that it will win any fight you start with it, fear becomes meaningless." The young HFY was silent for a long moment. "I do not wish to learn how she knows this," he said at last. Kesrith resumed walking. "Neither do I." "Young one, neither do I." Above them, the human shuttle broke through the upper atmosphere and vanished into the black embrace of space, carrying Dr. Elena Vasquez home to a species that had walked its way to the top of one food chain and would, if given enough time, walk its way to the top of every food chain in the galaxy. Not because they were the strongest, not because they were the fastest, not because they were the deadliest, but because they were patient and because they never, ever stopped. And in the end, across the vast span of evolutionary time, that was the only thing that had ever truly mattered. The hunt always went to the one who could keep walking after everyone else had fallen down, and humans have been walking for a very, very long time.